All right, you guys, we're gonna go ahead and we are going to start get this rolling. All right, good stuff. So I've got it recording so that it can be up on it can get put up on YouTube later. Hey, hope you guys are having a good day. Um, so nonetheless, um, I was telling a few people, actually Bob, I was telling Bob about this earlier. It felt like a Monday today. I don't know about you guys, but nonetheless, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I know there'll be some other people tuning in or watching the replay of this. It's an important topic, especially as someone who's looking to get into business and investing. So what we'll do real quick is I want to just introduce what North Shore Real Estate Investors Association is, if you're not familiar with it. But North Shore Real Estate Investors Association, it's a free meetup. Thanks to COVID, we've been more on the webinar side of things lately. But I anticipate continuing the webinar side even after we can go back to meeting in person. And a lot of you guys have asked about that. At this point, July is on the table. I still have to confirm some things with places like the hotel conference room and whatnot. But I'm actually going to be sending out a survey. So for everyone who gets our newsletters, know that I'll be sending out a survey to see if I can get some interest as far as just, hey, where does everyone fall as far as doing a meeting, whether that be in a hotel conference room or somewhere else, just to try to see where everyone's at to get a feel for it. That's going to help as far as doing the kind of just trying to move this along. It's hard because it's not black and white. So keep an eye out for that if you do get our newsletter. And then what I'll try to do is I'll try to do a link where I can post it online if you follow us on social media, so you can vote on there. Just give us some feedback. It'll help me get some information to kind of run with. Some other things so generally every month we do 2 to 3 meetups, but now with COVID, we've been doing mostly webinars. So I want to give you some information on how we, what we have coming up. So tonight's part 1 of Why Money Matters with Paul and Charlene LaGrange. Part 2 is going to be on June 23rd. And so I'm going to make sure to emphasize this a few times throughout tonight so you guys can register if you want to attend for part 2. If you look in the chat part down at the bottom, you'll see I've got the link already in there. I want to make sure it's a separate link from tonight, so you need to make sure you register for that one. It's going to be the same situation as this. So that's on June 23rd. And then the following week on June 30th, I'm going to have Ms. Jana with First American Exchange Company. She's going to talk on what every real estate investor needs to know about 1031 exchanges. If you don't know what that is, it is a fantastic tool that can actually help whenever you go to sell a piece of real estate, especially if you have a piece of property that you've owned for a while, that's been a rental. It is a great opportunity to go ahead and utilize. It's a tax tool. It's a great tool for that. I know Bob could speak a lot on that, but hey, nonetheless, you guys, it's something that if you don't know much about 1031 exchanges, and if you own investment properties or plan to own investment properties, is a great thing to get educated on. So we've got June 23rd. We have part 2 of the Why Money Matters for entrepreneurs and investors, and then on June 30th, we're going to have the information on that one. I'm actually going to put that information out tomorrow. You guys are hearing about it for the first time. I have it all confirmed. And so you guys are going to be hearing about it first, but otherwise, however you heard about this, it's going to be another online webinar. So that's June 30th. It's what every real estate investor needs to know about 1031 exchanges. And then July 2nd, Bob Norton and myself are going to be sharing on house hacking. So this is an important topic, because a lot of times we talk about, okay, how can you do rentals? How can you do flips? How you can do X, Y, Z? But a lot of times we don't talk about the properties that we live in, that we go to at the end of the day, properties like this one. What do you do for your primary residence? How, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, how do you see your primary residence, and how how do you get the most bang for your buck, or how do you get a great return on it? So Bob and I are going to talk about that. So again, that's on July 2nd. So just keep that in mind. If those topics interest you, make sure you go to our website so that you can stay in the loop. All of these events are free thanks to some local sponsors. So many times people will text me and say, hey, Courtney, do you have an investor-friendly title company, or do you have a lender that you recommend, or do you have, XYZ? So here's some people that I'm proud to recommend. And so, for example, we've got Christina Rusko with Loan Depot. She's doing a ton of refinances for people right now. We have Justin Harris. He is a land wholesaler. If you've ever either been interested in land or want to buy land, he's someone great to connect with. Got Bob Norton. He's on here. He's a real estate specific CPA. And look, I brought my taxes today. I took that extension and I took it liberally. And so I've been needing to get my taxes done. So I finally just brought those to him today. Florida Lead Title is another one. I just opened up a deal with them today and am hopefully going to be able to close it by Friday. We've also got Total Construction and Renovation. They're a local flipper who has a construction company. So they're great if you need someone to help, GC to manage your flips. We've got Quest Trust. They're a great company that can help with self-directed IRAs and educate you as far as on retirement accounts that are beneficial. You also have Wayne Sanji and Associates. They are a property management company. They're now licensed in Mississippi, which is new. They're fantastic property managers, very well experienced, North Shore, South Shore, and now in the Mississippi area. And then we've got Mia Rogers, who is a local real estate agent, who's an investor herself. So ultimately, these are people who I highly recommend. A lot of times, a lot of people, you come to these events wanting to network to try to find some resources. Know that there's a ton of them in this group. So keep that in mind, that coming to these events, especially whenever we are able to do them in person again, know that you never know who you're going to get to meet, how that's going to help build your business and help you maybe make your next step in whatever that looks like. Another thing is that if there's anything that, especially in the day-to-day life, know that we have a group on Facebook. It's Southeast Louisiana Real Estate Investors. I'll try to put that in the chat section. But that is a great option for your everyday questions that you may have. Maybe you want to talk about a deal. Maybe you have questions about maybe something that's going on, or hey, I have a tenant who's not paying, and you've got questions about, hey, what does the eviction process look like? I mean, of course, we're not attorneys or we're not giving advice along those lines, but maybe you just want to connect with other investors and use it as a local forum, whether that says, hey, do you have a plumber you recommend, on the South Shore in this area, in the West Bank, or hey, do you XYZ? So it's great to get plugged into stuff like this. Yes, these webinars are great for the education side of it, but also know that the networking part is huge. And so know that right now, without us being able to meet in person with COVID, that we're just gonna have to settle for online. So try to plug in places like that. Lastly, if you guys haven't heard already, you can tune in on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. If you're local in this region, which I believe all of you are, you can tune in to WWL, so that's 870 AM or 105.3 FM, and you can listen. Paul LaGrange, who's going to be sharing tonight with his wife Charlene, and we do a radio show. It's the Home Improvement Show, and it's a call-in show. So in the beginning of the show, I've been sharing tips on how to solve problems with real estate that you can't fix with a hammer. For example, this past weekend, I shared about just kind of a case study of how I've bought from 2 landlords in the past. And it's just, I'm sharing on things that are not necessarily home improvement wise, but then Paul is sharing on the construction and home improvement side. So number one, it's really educational in those regards. It's also a call-in show. You can text or you can call in. And so there's questions that get brought up. I know this past Saturday, I talked about landlocked land. I talked about foreclosures, and Paul talked about, Paul, was this last Saturday at the B show? No, I think that was the previous week.
It was the week before, yeah.
Yeah, it was the week before.
We get all kinds of questions. You never know or what they can ask live on the radio. So
Oh, yeah.
just on their mind.
Questions about foundations, questions about AC, questions about generators, you name it, roofs, you name it. It's a great way to stay informed, or if you ever have a question, it's a great freebie to call in. Say, hey, I've got a rental that's giving me issues with this, or my house is giving me issues with this, and you can call and get tap into some free but very wise advice there. So if you haven't heard already, that's every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. You can tune in on WWL, which is 870 a.m. or 105.3 FM. We'd love to have you guys either listen or call in or text in, okay? Without further ado, I'm going to hush, and what I'll be doing is I'll be moderating. So whenever you guys joined in, you were muted. And so what we're going to encourage you, if you look down at the bottom of your screen where it says chat, if you've got any questions, can you go ahead and post them in there? And what I'll do is I'll make sure that Charlene and Paul get to see them. And so I'll be moderating in the sense that I will make sure any questions that you guys have get answered. But Paul and Charlene are I highly respect them. I've been wanting to do some conversations on money management, just because that is imperative. I mean, we can desire to invest in real estate or to build businesses all we want, but if the money coming in is not being used effectively, it's almost like as if we're on a rat on a wheel, right? So it's an imperative part of the process, and I highly respect what Paul and Charlene have built in their life, and so I invited them on. Paul, Charlene, and I, we partnered up back in the beginning of this year, but we've known each other for a few years now. And so you guys are in for a treat as far as learning from them. Definitely take notes, ask questions, engage, and know that this is just part one. Part two is also going to be a great part to either join in. If for some reason you can't make it on the 23rd, you can actually watch the replay as well, okay? All right, without further ado, I want to go ahead and bring on Paul and Charlene, if you guys want to share a little bit more about you guys' self.
You bet.
Hey.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Hey, we're so glad and honored that we're able to hear and share this topic. This is a topic that Sean and I are fairly passionate about, and we get a chance to talk about it quite often to a lot of different groups and a lot of different age groups. And I think this topic really goes across any level of experience or skill set. What do you do in life, occupation, whether you stay at home, you take care of your family, or if you're actually running a corporation. And this is true for any business at any age. And we start with these principles with our children very young and bring them up and train them in that method. Sean and I have had the great pleasure of also meeting with some college-age students, and we would go through a set curriculum for that, but discussing these topics. Some of this you may think, oh, well, yeah, I do that anyway. I don't really need that. Well, I'm going to encourage you, don't tune out. Stay tuned in, stay engaged, because I think we all, including ourselves, this is one of the reasons why Sean and I talk about this topic often and share this topic often, is so that we keep us sharp and focused on these important topics. And, if it's fresh in our minds, then it's something that we can always be mindful of and aware of, so that we can make some pretty good choices and decisions in the future. And let that guide us as we are considering any opportunity or any choice, whether it's personal or on the business level. You can use these principles to that. So one of the things I really wanted to bring up as well is in the last number of weeks since March, since we've started the COVID-19 pandemic, is I've come across, and Charlene's come across, two different groups. And the first group of people is a group of folks that have had no interruption whatsoever in their workflow or in their revenue, and things just kind of chugged along. They may have been part of the essential, workforce group, or maybe not. Maybe they had an online business that didn't have a hiccup at all, and they continue to move on. And if that's you, that's great. The other group of folks that we have come across is either they've either had a full or partial interruption in their workflow or in their revenue, and they've had to make some plans or in the process of making some plans. If you are in group one and you've had no interruption, don't tune out, because there's some valuable information here that we really want you to stay engaged. Just because it didn't happen to you this time doesn't mean there won't be a change in life or an emergency in the future that you won't have to contend with and plan through. So we can encourage you to stick with it, both for this webinar as well as part 2, which is going to happen in 2 weeks. So if you pay attention and going through this, you're going to find that these webinars are going to help you improve your finances, but also your quality of life, your focus, and greatly reduce stress. Because if you've ever had any financial worries, you know that your anxiousness kind of increases, your level of stress definitely increases around this topic. And if you're married or have a business partner, you know that finances is a stress point. And, we encourage you to be able to use these tools, use these principles, and be able to walk through it and reduce that level of stress. One of the things that, we always like to start off with in discussing this topic is fear versus empowerment. And I think we need to have a clear understanding what's the differences between fear and empowerment. Charlene, why don't you talk about the fear side?
How many people have you heard say over this whole coronavirus time that they just can't get anything done? They can't focus, they can't complete a thought, or they can't complete a project, but they have so many things to do. I've heard more people say that. I've even been guilty of that as well. And I think that all stems down to fear. Our lack of control with relation to the coronavirus situation, our lack of control with our finances in some ways, because we don't know if our businesses are going to continue. Is our tenant going to pay us rent this month? You just don't know. There's a lot of fear there. I think a lot of us, women especially, have a tendency to think in circles. And, so I personally have to be careful what I think about. I have to take every thought captive and just be very purposeful in not allowing the fear to take over and control my day. You don't want to be controlled by the emotions, but you want to be controlled by the facts.
So I think what we're really saying here is that it's not that you don't have the emotion. You certainly have the emotion. You have the fear, but we're encouraged you, don't let that fear paralyze you. Don't let it make you take, I can't take any action. I can't focus. We're asking you to do it, but do it afraid. Have a plan. Have the power to decide that you're going to go ahead and make a choice. And that's the empowerment side, is that you're in control. There's action items. You're making choices based on research and knowledge, not on emotion. You're not reacting, you're being proactive and having that empowerment and making that choice. Something that I see folks do, and this is way before our recent challenges we've had with the economy and our country, is they'll aim some more, then they'll aim a little bit more, and they never pull the trigger and shoot. They never make that choice to take that action. I'm of the mindset that I would much rather see you shoot and aim, meaning you get to shoot, you can see where your bullet landed, and then you got to adjust, you got to pivot, you got to make those corrections in order to get it closer to your target. I would much rather see you take imperfect action than take no action at all. And I think that's really important, because a lot of times we'll get that analysis paralysis and just overthink it. And not that you shouldn't reach out and have that critical thought, which we're going to talk about how to make those better choices in a few minutes. We're not saying don't make a good choice, don't make an informed choice. We're saying don't get so paralyzed in the thought of making sure everything's exactly perfect before you take action. It's never going to be perfect. Mm-hmm. Whatever you've built up in your mind is not going to happen the way you planned it. That's a good example of that is how two older children were having weddings planned since this started in March. Well, guess what? Those wedding plans got changed because of COVID-19. So even though they built up in their mind that they're going to have this wedding at a certain venue and it's going to happen a certain way, it just didn't happen that way. That's the way life is. So we need to adjust. We need to reassess. We need to pivot. We need to take some more action and then adjust again. And that's how we've done it over the years, and it's worked out fairly well for us. So take action. Something else too is as we are making choices and making decisions, and we have a variety of diversification when it comes to revenue. And that really is by design, because Charlene and I have a number of businesses that we operate together. Some are owned by us only. Some we are partners with others. Some we joint venture with others. Courtney mentioned that we've partnered together at the beginning of the year, and that's that's focusing specifically on the real estate side. We have other businesses and other sources of income that are diversified in lots of different markets. And even within each business, there's a level of diversification, so that, and that's one of the principles we'll talk about more so in part 2 than in tonight, is really to be able to have sources of income coming in when things aren't just right. And let's use the last 3 months as a good example of that. We had some revenue coming in from some investment properties that we own, some rental properties, both residential, single family, a duplex, and also some commercial property. But also, I have the great ability to, and honor to be able to teach at LSU. So I have money coming in as an educator for LSU Ag Center. We have other sources for consulting business. And with the consulting business, there's multiple levels of diversified levels of services we offer for different types of income. Some were affected by the COVID. There are a lot of customers that said, hey, I have this problem in my home, but I'm not letting you in to come do an inspection. We also do some legal expert work. So again, we have that wide array of different types of sources of income. Why don't you tell me about your background about being a CPA and how we incorporate all that and making some of these choices?
Well, after college, that's what I worked as before children, as a CPA. And then once we started having kids, I started working for Paul. So Paul and I have worked together and worked with Paul. We've worked together in many different things. But the whole real estate thing, we almost stumbled into sort of by accident, sort of out of necessity. Paul's family has always done rentals. But when we first got married, we were looking to build our own home. And there was no way we could afford that. So we went down the path of building a duplex. So the other side of the duplex helped pay the note. So that's how we got started in rentals. And we still have that duplex today.
And what's interesting about that is that duplex took us a little bit longer to build than a normal home, mostly because we did a huge amount of sweat equity. Every evening on weekends, I was bartering with different trades that I worked with because I was doing other construction projects, saying, hey, I'll do this for you if you do this for me at my house. And that's actually how we got the place built. And it's like Charlene said, we still have it today. And we are also hoping that we can pass that along and transfer that to our kids and bless not only our children, but our children's children. And that's one of our goals. And we'll talk about some of that vision, some of that goal in part 2, but that's really what we want to do. And Charlene's right that, my parents have some rental property. My grandparents had rental property. My great-grandparents had investment property and land. So it's definitely in the family. This is something that we started on early on in our marriage life. Just to share something personal, yesterday was our wedding anniversary.
Yes, 29 years.
29 years. Come on, somebody. So we had, we had the great benefit of having some trusted advisors and some folks that were willing to pour into us to tell us and show us how to do that. And also having the construction background and Charlene having the CPA, it kind of goes hand in hand. We use all those things when making some of these choices. Charlene also has a finance degree. I have a finance degree with a minor in real estate from UNO. So again, we use those principles we learned even back in the 80s to some of the choices we're making today. Mm-hmm. Now, it is a little bit different because you need to adjust with the market, but that's something that, again, you're pivoting and you're changing, you're reacting to circumstances as circumstances change. So let's get back to steps to making an objective decision. And we want that objective point to be really focusing on. So we want to encourage you to focus on truth, focus on facts, focus on data, not drama, not speculation, not what decisions other people making. Just because they made that choice doesn't mean you have to make that same choice. So we really want you to analyze and focus on the truth and the facts and the data, and not necessarily the drama.
Right. Sometimes looking through Facebook or even having on the news on the TV in the background while I'm cooking dinner, those things create fear and anxiety in me. As I see somebody else panicking over something, I don't know about y'all, but I have a tendency to panic over it as well. So think about what you're thinking about. Be careful what you're watching. Be careful what you're taking in.
Yeah.
You know, when a hurricane's coming and I go to the grocery store to stock up on stuff and people are panicking and grabbing stuff off the shelf, that makes me afraid. So you have to be careful on those things.
Yeah, so here's the other part of making some objective decisions. We're going to encourage you to write out a plan. Charlene and I are both planners. And in fact, at the beginning of every year, we'll get together as a family with our children, and we'll start planning out and goals and action items. And we'll go around the table at the beginning of every year and we'll ask the children, hey, you know, what do you want to do for this year? We even review what was on last year's plan and how did you do it? How did you meet your target? If you didn't meet your target, what would you do different this time to continue to go after that target? And Charlene and I as parents will also give goals and action items for each one of our kids. And so we're really big on planning. We will do that for lots and lots of different choices, not just business, but also with family, with dreams we have in reference on how are we to get to, you know, Charlie and I have an aspiration to do traveling with our kids as they're getting married with their spouses and their grandkids and, you know, wherever we'd like to go. And how will we do that? What are we planning for today to make that happen sometime in the future? So writing out a plan and then phase in that action plan. It's okay to bring phases. It's nothing wrong with that. It helps you organize your priorities. And what's your top priority? You know, focus on your top 2 or 3 priorities. And then you can pivot and adjust your action steps as because it's all dynamic. As things change, as conditions, circumstances change, you can certainly adjust those action items to get closer to what your targets are, what your goals are. Here's something I really want you to think about. It's up to you. You have to decide who or what is in charge of your business. And if you don't have a plan, if you don't have action items, you don't have the steps it's going to take to achieve it, you're aiming for nothing. And that's exactly what you're going to get. And you need to decide who or what's in charge of your business plan. And this is true for your business as well as even your personal plans. I want you to design an action plan to achieve your goals. And I want those action items to line up with your values. And some of the values that Cheryl and I talk about often are things that, you know, are important to us. Your values may be a little bit different than ours, and that's fine. We're not going to stand here today and tell you what your values should be. That we want you to have the freedom of choice. We want you to be able to identify what those values are and some action plans on how to achieve them.
Yes, so design your action plans to achieve your goals. When we get a paycheck, first thing I do with it is I tithe. Then I put 20% in savings. That savings is not always a long-term savings. It sometimes is saving for our property tax or saving for, you know, certain things that only come along, you know, once a year or not, you know, consistently. Also saving for retirement. These are the things you have to think about. You need to think about retirement. One day you will retire, and the majority of us don't have a pension. Hence, that's a great thought for rental property, that the money will keep coming in. Financial goals, our plans. We pay our bills on time. Every month, about the same time every month, I sit down with the stack of bills and pay the bills. Watch your spending. Think about tomorrow. You can't always increase your income. Start thinking about tomorrow. The second thing we like to do, action plan, is a lifestyle. We live frugally. We reduce the amount of times that we go out to eat each week. We try to be careful with how we spend our dollars. You know, for example, instead of getting a real expensive coffee at Starbucks, maybe you want to get a cheaper coffee. Or a novel idea, make the coffee yourself at home. Just start thinking about what's important to you. That coffee may be very important to you, so you need to prioritize that, or it may not be. So start thinking about what's important to you and what's important with your family. You need to make choices related to your family as well, such as, you know, if you're working at night, maybe you can't spend time with your kids at night. Maybe you want to get a job that you can work during the day. Everything is related to choices. when you're having a special celebration for an event, a birthday, a graduation, do you want to go out to eat and spend $25, $30 per person, or do you want to cook at home? Everything is related to choices, and you need to make your dollars work for you.
Something else too is you are developing those action items. Something that I find that's very useful for me, and Charlene does it, and Courtney even does it as well, is called time blocking, where you actually take a period of time, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, whatever it's going to take to do that task, and get very consistent and time block that every single week, or if it needs to be touched on 2-3 times that week. Block out your calendar. I live and die by my calendar. If it's not on my calendar, there's a great chance it's not going to happen. So I have everything on my calendar so I don't forget, and I can manage my time. And then at the end of the day, I can look at the next day's calendar events and start planning for that the evening before. And I think that's really, really important. And because if you're not dedicating time to get that task done, something else is going to become more urgent or more important. And that doesn't mean I stick to the time block 100% of the time, because there are things that are just come out of the blue that need my attention, that I need to move things around in order to accommodate that change in schedule. But you better believe I'm going to go back to that block of time. It may not start at 1 o'clock. It may start at 2 o'clock that afternoon, and I'm going to get that thing done. And then the other part of that too is that when you are time blocking, what I like to do is, if there's a task that requires a lot of brain power or creativity, I'll do that early in the morning while my mind is fresh. I won't do it in the afternoon. I'll save my afternoon for the tasks that are menial, that it doesn't take a lot of brain power for me to make that happen. I can just do it, and not have to focus as much. If it's an activity that requires a lot of focus, that's going to be a morning activity. If it's a task that doesn't require as much focus, that's going to happen in the afternoon. If it's a task that doesn't require any focus, it's going to happen at night. And we kid about here this all the time at the house, is that if you want to have an intelligent, meaningful conversation with me, it better happen before 9 o'clock. Because after 9 o'clock, my brain starts shutting down. And I'm, listen, you want to have a great conversation, wake up with me at 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, drinking a cup of coffee, and we can have a great conversation then. Now, that doesn't always work with teenage kids. I give you that. It always seems that our children come in the house at about 10 o'clock, want to have these long, drawn-out, meaningful conversations, when I'm have to wake up again and re-engage. Charlene's much better at that than I am, but she does a much, much better job than I do. A lot of times I'll say, hey, that's after 9 o'clock. We need to talk about this tomorrow. All right, so be proactive and not reactive when making these choices. I want you to really get in that mindset of being proactive, not reactive. Stay ahead of these choices. You need to think critically. Take the time and the effort to analyze each choice or opportunity or each problem, each issue you may have from a critical perspective. I'm also going to encourage you to gather input and get some feedback from trusted advisors. Trusted advisor to me is someone that has expertise in the field where you need help. Courtney mentioned Bob Norton earlier today at the beginning of this presentation. Bob's on the call now. Charlene and I trust Bob and turn to Bob often, saying, hey, Bob, we have this question. You help us with this. And, he'll run us through the process. He's a trusted advisor. We have trusted advisors that are in the legal field. We have trusted advisors that are a life coach or other financial coach. Our family, if they've experienced it. It's something else too, is that if you are seeking out a trusted advisor and you're trying to identify who would work well for you, well, find somebody who's doing something that you want to do and emulate that and go ask them for some time, but don't just steal time from them, bring value to them. If you're having a cup of coffee or lunch or breakfast with them, make sure you're paying for it. Come ready and prepared with questions to that trusted advisor. Don't just show up and kind of hem and haw. Use their time wisely, because I promise you, if they're successful with what they're doing, they're taking special dedicated time out of the day to feed back to you. And I love collaborating. There's a big difference between competition and collaboration. I like collaborating with people. I like helping our community. I want to bring everybody higher in a sense of helping out the industry. I've done that a lot in construction. We've done it a lot in building science. And then Charlene and I are doing it also along with Courtney in the real estate investment field as well. And we do that for a lot of different types. So acquire all information so you can make an informed choice. If you don't have all this information, you're going to ask some better questions. I want to make sure that you're asking the right question to reach the right decision. So how do we make a proactive stance of asking better questions?
So do you remember in school, they used to tell you the 5 W's and an H, who, what, when, where, why, and how? That's where you start to ask better questions.
So let me just give you some examples of some good critical questions that we ask ourselves. Who do we serve? Who are our customers? What are you trying to accomplish? What are the pros and cons of this decision, the problem, or this opportunity? What resources are required to make this happen? Do you have those resources? If you don't have those resources, where do you get them? Where can we improve? Sometimes you got to ask the hard questions. Listen, we and no one is on this call and it's in my office, but if we say this off in my office is, don't be afraid to call my baby ugly. I want to know where are my faults so that I can work through them, or I can find someone that will match that, where they shine and they're gifted in that arena. And I want to make that person aware of my shortcomings so I can let them shine in their giftedness. So where can we improve? Where are my blind spots? The whys. Why are we in business? And sometimes I think it gets convoluted. If you've been in business for a long period of time, your business plan may have an inch of dust on top of it. I encourage you to take that down and revisit that business plan. You may find that what you're doing today is not what you wrote down in the business plan years ago. Another why. Why do we keep making the same mistake? I keep talking to people and they keep making the same mistake over and over and over again. You need to get off that circle, and you need to identify why you're making mistakes and what can you do different to prevent making those mistakes again in the future. And some of the hows. How does this decision align with our values? How does it benefit my customers? Man, if you're putting the customer first in any business, if it's real estate, you're putting the homeowner that you're serving first. You're putting your customers first. It makes these choices a lot easier. And if you're bringing value to them and you're helping to achieve their dream and their goal or their vision, yours will come as well. All right, so let's talk about some things we can do during hard times. I'm going to go over each one of these. I'm going to kind of list them out, and I'm going to hand it back over to Charlene, and she's going to break them down in detail. So let me just kind of go over some of the things you do during hard times. I want you to take an accurate, conservative screenshot of all your revenue, all your debt, all your monthly bills. I want you to develop a budget. I want you to focus and take care of the four walls. If your revenue and workflow has been interrupted, boy, you need to pare down. You need to focus on these four walls, meaning food, utilities, transportation, shelter. Those are the things you need to start off with, and you need to take care of those first before you can expand out. If your workflow has not been interrupted, then that maybe not be something you have to focus on. If you're at a point where you need to get some extra revenue, hey, you can sell some stuff. I promise you, there's something in your garage or in your house, or if you're like us, when we walk the neighborhood, our son comes with us, our youngest comes with a wagon. He picks stuff out of other people's trash and he repurposes it and he sells it. So you can sell some stuff. Some of the toys you may have that are, listen, nice to have. I have toys too. And there's some toys that I need to sell. It could be a boat, a four-wheeler. It could be a rocking chair you're not using. It could be anything that is, something nice to have, but you don't have to have. And you can sell that to get some money. We also want you to develop an emergency plan. And I think this is a big one. This is good for personal, is the emergency plan as well as the savings for your business, particularly with real estate investing. And Charlene will talk about it a little bit more. And then I want to also encourage you during hard times, and Charlene mentioned this before, think about what you're thinking about. Stop that stinking thinking, get off that circular motion of those negative thoughts, and I want you to focus on your plan. Something that we do on a weekly basis is we have a team meeting and we focus on our goals and our plans. What items did we get completed? What items are still open? What can the other person do to help you achieve those items? I do the same thing with my life plan. On Sunday mornings, my calendar reminds me, review your life plan. And these are my personal goals. You can do the same thing for your business goals. Because if you're keeping it in front of you, you're keeping it fresh. And having that review really helps me stay focused on that. So Charlene, I'm going to turn this over to you. The first time we talked about is take an accurate, conservative screenshot of your revenue streams, your debt, and your bills. Why do we do that? And how do we do it?
Well, pull out your bank statements for the last few months. Pull out your credit card statements, personal, business, whatever you have. There's going to be things on there that you probably have forgotten that you put on auto draft or auto pay. Be sure to write all of this down. Take an accurate assessment of your income and of your expenses. You can't figure out how to save money or how to better spend your money if you don't know exactly what you're getting. List each account. If it's a debt, a car note or a house note, list the amount that's due. You might have to call the bank to find out. List the interest rate, the payments. You can also even start to look at how can you pay these things off sooner. Maybe not right now, but as things start to improve, can you pay a little bit more on that house note every month? Get that paid off faster. Take a screenshot of your financial condition and be very specific and figure out exactly what your income and expenses are every month. Don't forget to include the annual stuff.
So something else that we talk about with our college students, because a lot of times they don't have access to those statements. So we'll tell them, hey, get a notepad, write down, or on their phone in their notes, write down everything you spent, whether it's, it's a candy bar, it's a cup of coffee, or it's lunch, write every single thing down. And that for every day for 30 days. And that will give you a good idea where your money's going.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to tell your money where to go. And if you don't know where you're spending your dollars, I think you'll be surprised how much money you spend in certain categories. And once you have everything written down, you can put it in different categories. When we've gone through this class before, I remember a lot of folks astounded about how much money they spent on monthly groceries. And they were just going down the aisle, just grabbing things off the shelves and not necessarily have a grocery list. And they found that their spending was really ramped up when they didn't go in there with a plan, a meal plan or a grocery
Mm-hmm.
list.
Right. That's true. That's true. So your second step is going to be to make a budget. Don't forget to do this step. Develop a plan. Tell your money where to go.
Well, this is something, again, we get lots of different feedback from different folks, and we've been involved with this. And sometimes I find myself getting into this, is that developing a budget is not just about money. It's not just about the numbers, although it has a lot to do with that. Let me tell you about some other wins about developing a budget. And this is true whether this is with your spouse or a business partner. Developing a budget forces you to identify your priorities. It also forces you to identify your values. And then you come to an agreement and you have some unity when you have a budget. And when you develop a plan to what is important to you and what's important to your business and what's important to your family. So you have a plan of action on how to get there. So the win here is that you've worked out your differences and you have agreement and you have an action plan. So those are all the benefits of having a budget. And if you say, man, I'm not really good at having a budget, then go get a financial coach. Listen, there's coaches out there that will be willing to help you, walk you through this process. There are online services that are free. There are apps that you can use for a budget and make it real simple. If you're wanting to move forward with this, you really should be moving forward with this. We're told to make sure we have an accounting of what it's going to cost before we start that project. And that's really important. The only way you can do that is with a plan and with a budget. And if you don't have that, you really don't know, or you have no control. I mean, then the fear starts coming back in because you're losing control and you're out of money and you still got, 10% or 20% of the project left to accomplish.
Right. Have you ever heard the statement, more month than money? That's exactly what he's talking about. Sometimes people get a side job or a side hustle. So I've known people who bought things that are broken, fixed them up and sold them and made some money. Or people who go to garage sales and pick up a few things and, make something else out of it and sell it to make some money. There's so many options for a side job. I know a lady who walks dogs and takes care of people's pets, and every year she puts it on Facebook. Hey, don't forget about me when you're planning your summer vacation. I'll be happy to watch your pets. So many things you can do to balance your budget.
Yeah, you can get really creative with that. There's lots of things you can do in reference to those side hustles, and do something you're passionate about. Do something with your kids. If you have children, you want to learn, teach them how to work, teach them, work ethic and character and being contributors to the family. Bring them along, do it with them. There's nothing wrong with that. We do it with our kids, and it helps them along when they become responsible adults of what it's going to take. Plus, they also see, you hustling too. And again, this could be for your business. This doesn't have to be personal. My daughter was doing a side hustle today in Hammond, and she brought her younger brother with her. And he got to hang out with his older sister while she did her job and made some extra bucks. So he got to see that. So that's an envision where he gets to see that happening in real life. And that builds confidence in him that, hey, my sister can do it. I can do it too. And it gives him ideas on what he can do in reference to a side hustle.
Right.
And the next thing is emergency plan. And this is something that I really want to encourage you to build in. And this may be something you phase in. You may not be able to do an emergency plan right away, but an emergency plan for your personal as well as your real estate or your businesses. I can assure you, because it's happened to us, we have multiple investment properties. The same day the air conditioning breaks on one house, your roof is going to leak on the second house at the same time. And the roof's got to be replaced, and the air conditioning has to be repaired or replaced. Or listen, it happens that way. You need to have an emergency plan in order to be able to fix those things and not to go into debt to get those items repaired. And that comes through proper planning. Same thing with those annual property taxes, with flood insurance, with your homeowner's insurance. All these things have to be planned out. And if you're not putting a little bit of money aside every month you get that rent check, you're not treating it like a business. And this truly is a business. If you're a landlord, this is a business. And if you're not treating it like a business, I can assure you that may not be today, but sometime in the future, you're going to get burned. And you're going to be very sorry you didn't take the time to develop an action plan, a goal, a vision, treat this like a business, and also have that emergency plan. And that emergency plan, that fund there is sitting in the savings dedicated for the by the ways, the things you did not plan for. It's an emergency. And that can also be true for your family stuff as well.
Yeah, that's true. If your car breaks down, if you have some money in your emergency fund, you can use that to fix it. You'd rather not go into debt over these things if you don't have to.
Washing machine. I can't tell you how many times the washing machine's broken and I've repaired it myself. And I finally got to the point where I said, okay, it can't be repaired anymore. I've done everything I can do. The same thing it's just eventually it's breaking out. Well, what do? Well, you need to go buy a washing machine. So you take that out of your emergency fund and you go purchase that washing machine. We tried to live on a cash basis, not on debt.
Right. And be frugal on these things. Your washing machine breaks. You do not need to go buy a high-end washing machine. Go buy a cheap one, a used one. One of the best washing machines I've ever had, I paid $35 for. Used machine. So
still have it today.
Still have it. Yeah, absolutely.
The machine that kept breaking was the fancy one we bought about 12, 13 years ago that was a piece of junk. Mm-hmm. So listen, it's an emergency. You have that emergency plan, emergency fund available to take advantage of some of these hiccups that happen in life.
That's right. So next step, review your finances, your bills, your income every week. If you have a spouse, do a State of the Union with them. Go through everything every week, because just like if you're trying to eat healthy or trying to be on a diet, the more you review and read books about it, read recipes, it stays in your mind, and the easier it is to think about it and the easier it is to do. The more you look at your finances and you think about it, the easier it is to stick with a budget and stick with your plan.
It's on the forefront of your thinking in your mind. It's fresh. It's like I mentioned earlier, I'd review that life plan once a week. Because it reminds me of my goals of why I'm doing things. Listen, it's that motivation that makes me kick my feet off the side of the bed and get up every day and get it done. Is because it's fresh in my mind. The same thing with your budget. Same thing with your action items. Same thing with your business plan, your goals, however you want to describe it, as you are keeping it fresh in your mind. And I know this sounds weird, but and trust me, I know it's weird. Speak it out loud. Say it out loud. Read those words out loud. There's something about you hearing your own voice that makes it come to life. And I assure you that the first couple of times you do it, you can say, man, this is kind of strange. Keep doing it. Keep pushing through it, because the person you hear the most in your entire life is yourself, right? The person you see in the mirror every day. So there's some power in your words coming out of your mouth, speaking over it and claiming it and saying, this is what's going to happen today. And this is why I'm doing it. Here's my motivation. And it's like, for instance, I think you need to drill down, keep asking the why, and get to that true core motivation of why you're making some of the choices you're making. Don't keep it vague. Get very, very specific. You know, I mentioned earlier, we walk the neighborhood. Well, why do we walk the neighborhood? Well, sometimes it's because Charlene and I need some connection time and get away from the business and the cell phones and family. We'll go walk the neighborhood. We'll bring my mom with us sometimes, and we'll walk the neighborhood and connect with my mom. We'll do the same thing with our kids. We'll invite our kids to come with us on occasion. So it's that connection time. But there's some other whys too, is to get some exercise. The other whys would be because not just I want to exercise, I want to lose some weight, but I want to be healthy and play and alive and active with my grandchildren. Well, to me, that's a big motivator. A lot of things we plan for is family and our children's children. Well, you know what? I better to be healthy enough and flexible and fragile and good enough shape so that I can spend and play some time with my grandkids. Because if I can't do that, then I certainly will be greatly disappointed. So I'm drilling all the way down of why we walk that neighborhood. So as you're making some of these choices, you're writing these goals down, keep going all the way down to it. Get a little bit deeper. And those motivations, those deep core motivations would really allow you to function in that task and do it with great joy.
Mm-hmm. So what if your budget doesn't balance? What are you going to do? Does it have to balance? Yes, it does. It has to balance. If your budget doesn't balance and your expenses are more than your income, you need to either do one of two things. You need to create more income or reduce your expenses. That gets back to what's important to you. What is your why for getting up in the morning? What is a need versus what is a want? You know, for some people, a Spotify subscription is a need. For others, that's a want, and they're very happy just listening to the radio.
Wait, you talking about a commercial Spotify? Commercial free?
Yeah.
For some people, that is a need.
Yes, it is. Yes,
for me, it's a want. So I'll get the free subscription to Spotify and not pay the premium price. But there's other things too that, you know, what about gym memberships? Is that a want or a need?
Yeah, it depends on the person.
Depends
Do
on the
you
person.
need that gym membership? You might, to keep you healthy, keep you strong, but you might not. So start looking on your bank statement. You know, our gym membership comes out of our account every month. It's drafted out. But if I didn't go to the gym for a long period of time, I might forget it was coming out. So start looking at those things. What can you eliminate to have more money in order to balance your budget? Do you need a cheaper car? Do you need to consider bartering for things? There's been things over the years that we've bartered for, and that's worked out pretty well. You know, is cable TV a need or a want in your life? You know, what are extras in your life that you can get rid of in order to create more income? That's how you balance your budget.
And only you can make that decision. We
Right.
can't make that decision or choice for you. So without a budget, without you having agreement with your business partner or with your spouse, it's going to be difficult to make some of those choices. And there are going to be some things you can agree on and some things you haven't agreed on. We'll table those issues until you have resolution. That doesn't mean you still don't start working on the budget now. Start working on the items you've agreed upon. For the few items you haven't come to agreement on, just continue to move forward with the resolution. You know, eventually you're going to have to get it resolved. So one way or another, you have to work through that process and getting a budget and get a very detailed budget. Don't be very vague. And I would do it per business or per project, again, to make sure that those income sources is going to offset your expenses, and you can make the return on your investment, the return on your time necessary to make it a project that would fulfill your values, fulfill your goals. It always flows back up to that plan that you have. So listen, we're all being affected one way or another, one shape or form or another by COVID-19. And we just want to share with you some of the things we're doing in order to go through some challenging financial times. And part two, again, we'll be back in 2 weeks, and we'll get to a little bit more detail in part two. And we're going to get to gaining control of your monthly income and expenses. We'll get into debt management. We'll talk about how we budget, how we manage our budget, how do we actually function in a budget, and then we'll may even talk about some of the investment properties we have and how those investment properties are working for us, and what other future opportunities we're looking at, and how do we go through that critical thought pattern on what it takes to make some of these choices. So right now, I want to open this up to questions and answers. Courtney, have you had the ability to see some of those questions?
Hey, you guys. So first of all, guys, they've just touched on a lot of different topics. So if you see down on the bottom of your screen where it says chat, if you want to type in a question down there, so if you've got any type of question, look, they have built multiple businesses, everything from consulting services to, contracting for multiple decades. Charlene's a CPA. She does the bookkeeping for the companies as well. There's a lot of wealth here, not only in building their portfolio as investors, but as entrepreneurs as well. It is not easy. Money is one of the things that a lot of people fizzle out on very easily. So if you've got a question, if you go down to the chat box, you can type it in there and we'll make sure to get it answered. Vince typed up earlier, he said, a good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed at some infinite point in the future. General George S. Patton.
I love that. So that really goes back to, I would much rather see you take imperfect action than no action at all.
Yes.
And, I see it all the time. And I mentioned it as, people think they need to get everything lined up exactly perfect before they can take the action. And very rarely does it happen that way. So I would much rather see you to take some action and then pivot and adjust after you've taken that action if need be, which I think you probably will. We always do. We've always have. And it may not that we adjust, the next month, but it may be 6 months later we'll make an adjustment, a little bit of tweak to fine tune it. It's all dynamic. It's never going to stay static. It's always going to change. And if you're going to stay in business long term, you need to be able to adjust as the circumstances and changes, adjust and make. We're going to have to make sure that we're reacting. We're being proactive. We're trying to stay ahead of the curve. And we've tried to do that as well when we are looking at future services that we're offering. What is our competition doing and how are they doing it? And there's sometimes we've done analysis of the time and the resources and the cost, and we decided not even to take part of that. There was an industry we brought in through, we're looking at photovoltaics, and this was back probably 17, 18 years ago. And we did the research, we did a business plan, we started looking at what the financials would be to make that happen, and also the resources it would take to make that happen. And ultimately it came down to us is, listen, we can't perform the way we want. And we're always seeking excellence. That's something that we teach with our kids, and it's something that Sean and I have always done, is that if we can't do this in excellent form, we don't want to do it. So we actually passed on that. It took a lot of time and effort to get to that decision, but it's that critical thought pattern that I'm talking about in order to make that informed choice.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, I've got a question for you, Paul and Charlene. If someone is looking to get started in investing in real estate, what do you think are some important tips or tricks that you would say, or let me rephrase that. How important should someone's debt and their ability to budget, how will it influence their ability to start investing in real estate?
Boy, that is a tough question. There are ways that you can participate in real estate investing without you necessarily owning the house. It may be that you have $10,000 and you can't find a home or a project for that little amount of money, or you're not loanable yet because you're still working your credit, or maybe you haven't been working in your field of business long enough. Well, you may choose to loan that $10,000 as a private lender to someone who is doing that type of work, and they pay you a fee and interest based on that $10,000 or whatever that level of investment is. So you can still participate as a private lender in the real estate arena and get the benefits of that. Or you may find that there are other creative ways that you can get into that property. The creative ways that we discuss at the monthly RIA meetings and on the Zoom meetings. It may be that you can acquire that property with some creative methods of, maybe it's subject to, or maybe that you're getting it to the point where you do some house hacking. And that's what Charlene and I did, was with reference to duplex. We put in huge amounts of sweat equity and bartering and called in all of our favors to get that duplex built. We lived in one side and rented the other side out. And the other side was actually got to the point where it was paying 100% of our mortgage. Right. And when we moved out of that duplex and moved into another home, we had both sides rented. So we're in huge positive cash flow on that. But it took a lot of planning and effort to make that happen.
There you go. Yeah, to live in the house too, sometimes that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly with the house hacking side. I know you and Bob Norton could talk about that in a future Zoom meeting.
Yeah. Well, on July 2nd, we're going to talk about house hacking. But a lot of times I see a lot of people who, they get so excited and they want to get started in real estate investing. And even if you can do it in a creative way with little to no money down or involved, do you need to have great credit score? Do you need to have a lot of money in the bank? Or do you need to have a lot of money, to get involved in real estate? So one of the things that we've talked about extensively is, yes, you can get into real estate with little to no money, but at the same time, one of the biggest reasons I've held back on not building my rental portfolio to a large amount is not because I don't know how to buy properties for little to no money. I mean, just in January, you guys have seen the opportunities that can pop up using certain strategies. It's the level that I don't want to outbuy my reserves, because
right.
It's easy to get into. I've bought multiple quote unquote free houses where I didn't have to come to the table with a whole lot of money. But at the same time, without those reserves, it's really easy for you to lose your shirt or bills to start piling up on themselves. So that's where budgeting and saving comes into play.
That's right.
You're absolutely about that. And that's that emergency plan, the emergency fund, is that, listen, there's some landlords right now that aren't being paid by their tenants, but their mortgages are still due, the property insurance is still due, the taxes are still due. Well, listen, you better have a plan in order to go through this thin time. And it may have nothing to do with COVID. It may be that that house was vacant, that tenant moved out, and you're having a difficult time putting someone else in his place. That does happen. Vacancy is not always 100%. In fact, very rarely is vacancy 100%. And that's something else too. And we'll probably talk about this in part 2, is when we're making some of the choices, Charlene and I are looking at a tenant and how much rent do we charge. We purposely, there are times when we will charge a lower amount of monthly rent to keep that tenant in there for a longer period of time, as opposed to charging a higher monthly rent. And we have lots of high turnover. Every year, they move out, you got to get a new person in. Well, that downtime and that repair time costs money. I would much rather take $100 or $200 a month less and have them there for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, as opposed to frequent turnover. And if you look at a cash flow return on investment, you can certainly see that does make a better play than having, the highest and best monthly rent and high turnover when you compare and contrast those two options.
One of those things is when you guys, I want to ask this a different way. A lot of people who are looking at getting started in investing in real estate or starting a business, they're like, oh, well, what about what about the idea of just putting it all on credit cards, like getting into debt to get started into whether it's investing or business? What are you guys'
Uh, my personal thought is if you're getting into that in a business, you're playing with fire. Now, I'm talking about consumer debt. I'm not talking about buying a piece of real estate that would be able to have income associated, revenue associated with that monthly expense. If you're getting underwater with large amounts of credit card consumer debt in order to start a business, you need to have a better plan, as far as I'm concerned, because that very rarely works. In fact, the success of most businesses is not very promising. Most businesses fail within the first 1 to 2 years of beginning. And a lot of that is because of failure to plan. And a lot of that is also failure to properly watch your finances. There's some businesses that we talk about and talk with, they don't realize they're upside down. They haven't done the analysis to look at their revenue, their expenses, but they're making choices based on gross revenue that's coming in, saying, look, all the money that's coming in every month. We can afford a bigger office. We can afford to get a new fleet of trucks for our employees. And they really don't know the true accurate condition of their flocks because they're not looking at the whole picture. Or they haven't reconciled their checking account in months, or something. So I think it's really, really important that there are other creative ways you can begin a business without going into gobs and gobs of credit card debt. It may be that you're bartering. It may be that instead of you getting an office space, that you rent a conference room when you need to meet with a customer face to face. Maybe you meet with the customer at their living room instead of at your place of business. There's ways to do that in order to accomplish that. If you are wanting to have someone in your office to answer your phone, but you don't have an office, you can't afford a person to answer the call, well, there are online answering services that would do that for you at a much, much lower cost and answer the phone and schedule your appointments and even send emails for you. So there's ways of slowly stepping into getting to where you want to be. You don't have to be there instantly. You can work your way towards that.
All right, let's see. Vince asked, what are the pitfalls associated with investing in real estate?
Well, Vince, we can do a whole webinar based on that. I know that most people get into real estate looking at what is the monthly rent they're going to get off that house. And you just get somebody to rent it and they just keep paying it. And you don't have to worry about things are breaking. You don't have to worry about maintenance. You don't have to worry about insurances and property taxes. I think there's a huge misconception of that. And I think that's mostly the fault of HGTV. And I'm not just picking that one channel, or that one show, because I think there's a lot of things that people have a misconception investing in real estate. And it's not just single family or multifamily. It could be if you're buying tax liens. It could be that, or if you're buying land and someone goes in your land and causes damage. We own some vacant land here in Madisonville, and one of the trees on the outer perimeter died. It got struck by lightning, and it was going to eventually fall. And it could fall in the neighboring property that we didn't own. Well, that neighboring property, that homeowner called me and said, "Hey, did you know you have a dead tree on your property?" He said, "No, ma'am, I didn't know that." She said, "Well, actually, I was in my backyard and I saw it get struck by lightning a month ago, and now it's brown. All the leaves are dead." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I understand. I will have someone come take that tree down, and that way you can. I assure you that that tree's not going to fall and damage your property." She was concerned about her fence and her backyard and patio and her kids playing in the backyard, and there's lots and lots of pitfalls and things that you just don't think about unless you've had that experience, or you are speaking to trusted advisors who can speak into that and speak to that topic so that you're fully informed. Again, that goes back to asking those better questions. We need to get to that critical thought and getting that good information so we can make some better choices and better decisions.
And your property will be vacant. There will be vacancy. And when it's vacant, the prior tenant may have done damage. It may be several months till you can get it rented again. You need to take all of that into consideration when figuring out how much to spend on that house.
And also how much to put into reserves, because so many people say, oh, I got $1,000 in reserves.
Yes.
That's
absolutely.
right, Courtney, because what if it's vacant for 3 months, 4 months? You know, when you're replacing floors or painting, you know, these things don't go that fast. Plus, it's expensive.
You know, something else too is, and I know we're focusing on the negatives, on the pitfalls, because that was Vince's question, but listen, the advantages and the benefits far outweigh the pitfalls. That's why we do this. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're looking to build wealth and be able to transfer wealth to your children, your children's children, real estate investing is the way to do it. And it's probably one of the better ways of doing that, of having that passive income, that unearned income coming into the mailbox is a great way to build some wealth and be able to transfer that asset to future generations.
And be retirement as well, monthly income at retirement.
Yes.
Absolutely. Hey, the number two ways wealth has always been built has been owning businesses and owning real estate.
Yes, absolutely.
So Robert's asked, what's the best way to start a partnership with a cash investor?
Cash investor. Well, you need to identify those cash investors. And then you need to make sure that your values and your goals align with theirs, as well as the timeline. And then I think you need to have a really, really good understanding of what role you're going to serve versus what role they're going to serve. If they're bringing the cash, no doubt they're going to be wanting a higher return in their investment than you may be receiving. It's probably not going to be a 50-50 split. It may be a 70-30 split or 80-20, depending on, again, what value are you bringing to the table versus what value they're bringing to the table. It may be closer to 50-50 because you may find the deal, you may do the work, they may just give you the cash to do it. It may be a private investor where they get just a little bit of interest and maybe a smaller percentage of participation. It depends how you structure the deal. But I think, first of all, you need to have a good understanding of what are your goals and what's your vision, what's your values, and then find someone that aligns up with that and make it happen. You may find that you're going to have to do a couple projects on your own to show that person that you're competent in order to achieve the service you're offering. You know, if you've never installed millwork or cabinets before or flooring, please don't go on YouTube and look at it and say, well, yeah, I can do that. I can assure you from a person who's hung the tool belt on his fat gut for many, many years, it ain't that easy. And I can assure you that what you're seeing on YouTube or on TV is not really what it takes to get it done. It takes a lot more skill and time and effort to make that happen.
One of the other things, Roberts, I'll say is the best way to start a partnership, and I don't know if you've got a cash investor in mind and you're just trying to figure out how do I structure it, or I'm not sure exactly your question, but one of the biggest things is, so two questions as far as a partnership. Is it a one-time partnership or is it ongoing partnership? Because those are two separate things. If it's a one-time partnership and you found a deal and you know someone, okay, so you do have an investor. So so I would decide if it's a one-time deal, a one-time partnership, or if it's an ongoing partnership. And then from there, I would go ahead and say, look, if it's an ongoing partnership, then I would consult with a CPA and like an attorney as far as if you want to, develop some type of entity. We did a talk on entities with Rob Norton and Florida Lee Title, the attorneys, not that long back. So you can actually watch that on our YouTube channel if you'd like. But the thought is like, for example, we've got private investors who lend on some of our flips and deals like that. Some of the stuff that's short term, less than a year, and it's, a lot of it's less than 3 months. And what we do is we don't have a partnership with them. What we do is we have an agreement where we'll use their money, their capital, and we'll tie it to the property with a promissory note and a mortgage. So whenever we buy the property, they're in first position. Just like whenever you buy your house, the bank gets a mortgage in first position. So they'll get a mortgage and a promissory note, which ties them to the property so that you don't have to worry about all the entity, owning an LLC together, for example. Or if you did all that, you would have basically a company together. But if you're just wanting to try some deals together, you can then work with them as far as tying them to the property. Because a lot of times they're going to say, hey, how do I know that, if you get hit by a bus, how do I know I'm going to, get my money back? Well, tying them to the property is going to be a brilliant, it's the way that we do it. And it assures them that they've got some collateral. So that is one thing. I'd highly suggest talking with the CPA though, or getting with a good like a closing company, like a title company, who knows how to, for example, write up a mortgage for a private lender or a promissory note for a private lender. Those things are important. Sometimes for our lenders, we do interest rates. Sometimes we do a what we call a participation, like equity participation, where sometimes someone will bring money, but they'll also do a few other things, and we'll give them a percentage of the deal. From experience, I don't do many of those with the same person throughout the year, just for different IRS reasons. But that is something where on certain basis, I will use a lender, and we'll do an equity participation. So hopefully that answers that question for you.
Something else too, in reference to that question, Courtney, I would suggest as we start meeting again at the monthly RIA meetings, that's a great place to talk to other folks that are in real estate investing, and realtors, private lenders, folks that JV. There's a variety of different levels of experience in the real estate market at those monthly meetings. So, Robert, if you haven't attended those meetings, as we start picking those back up, hopefully in July, we can make that happen.
Yeah, and an important thing too is, I would say lastly, is with and I'm pointing to these recent ones we did. We just recently did one with Steve Train on understanding private money. I think that was one of the last webinars we just did. So if you go on the YouTube channel, you can watch that. It's like an hour and a half long. I went into Steve Train shared on his different thoughts and with private lenders, but I shared as well. One of the things is, like Paul began to share, is what are you guys bringing to the table? Are they just bringing money? Are you going to be finding the deal? Are you going to be, maybe managing the flip or whatever? I would make that very clear and in writing, because, for example, I find it's often not beneficial if there's two flippers who are two people join and they're both flippers, and just one of them has money. Well, then what's the need for the other person, right? Too many chiefs, not enough Indians. So a lot of times I find that is a good partnership is when someone brings something that the other person is lacking. And a lot of times with private lenders, I've got to establish a sense of I'm not going to say a silent partner, but like, for example, if someone's a private lender, they're not going to get to go in there and say, here's the flooring I want, play HGTV as far as, here's the flooring that I think you should pick and things along those lines. And I say that in a funny way, but at the same time, know that there's a level that I've had to set boundaries before. And I just call it HGTV syndrome. Look, I'm definitely going to walk my investors through the projects that they're lending on. But when it comes to, like, for example, if I'm project managing, they're not going to be, if they're not involved in that part, they're not going to be, going to Home Depot or whatever and finding the different flooring and whatnot and saying, oh no, you should really do this color on the wall. I hope that makes sense. There's boundaries that have to get put into play there.
Hey,
Anyone else?
I wanted to bring up this book because we talked about asking the right questions, identifying your core values, developing a plan. This is a book that I highly suggest, Traction, that you take out and read. If you don't have it, you can get it used. It's an excellent book. It's a very easy, quick read to allow you to go through the process of identifying with yourself and also with your core team and eventually the rest of the folks that you work with, of your vision, how you can achieve it, action steps, and helps you, it even teaches you how to ask those critical questions. the 4 Ws and the H that Charlene brought up. So I think it's an excellent resource to start off with. Even if you've done business plans in the past. Now, I've done, quite a few business plans in the past. And when I read this book last year, it changed my perspective on how I want to look and do things. And some of the things I was already doing, but this kind of brought that back to my memory of this is why I'm doing it, and I need to continue to do that and ask those questions. So it does make a big difference to go through or a coach. If you got a financial coach or a business coach, more than likely they're digging some of these resources as well and helping you make these choices, these decisions.
I saw you pull over a pile. Did you have other books you want to recommend?
Oh, you got good eyesight. All right. So I love
it. Toward the end here, and so I want to make sure you get to share these books. And if anyone has any last final question, make sure you type it in. Yeah,
The Go-Giver. This is actually a book I've read twice. Charlene's read it once.
It's a great book.
I'm going to go back, and it reminds me of why I'm in business, and also how a mindset I need in doing business and helping others and helping my community. That's a book I will read on a regular basis. This is of, you've heard the Rich Dad Poor Dad. Of the Rich Dad Poor Dad series, by all means, this is my favorite one, the Cash Flow Quadrant. It really helps you make some better decisions and choices of where we should be concentrating and focusing on as not working in my business, but let my business work for me. So great book for that. Some of the principles we talked about tonight, and we'll continue to pick up and interject for part 2, is Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace. If you have not done this, again, he's got a lot of online apps and website and services and videos, as well as a radio show that you can listen to, and podcasts. It's a wealth of information. So there's some things we don't follow this book. Charlene, I don't follow this book for word for word, but there's a lot of great fundamental principles that we do, and we apply those principles and we teach those principles to our kids and to anyone else who's willing to listen to us. We don't agree with it 100%, but I can assure you probably 97% we agree with it, and those are action items that we take and incorporate in our business and also in our family budget.
Absolutely. Those are great resources, you guys. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if you can keep making more money. If you don't know how to manage it, look, you can find people who get more, maybe they got promotions at work, and all of a sudden, what does that come with it? The bigger house, the nicer car, the toys. Look, not saying you can't have those things, but not knowing, it doesn't matter how much money you can get coming in. If you can't manage it right, you won't be able to,
So it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you get to keep.
Yes.
Yep. Absolutely.
And that comes into managing your business.
Absolutely. All right. Well, if you guys don't have any more final questions, we're gearing up toward the end here. Thank you guys for joining in with us. Look, there's going to be a part 2. So let me go over these again. We've got on June 23rd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. We're going to have part 2. If you look in the comments, wherever you found out about this meeting, this webinar, you can sign up for part 2. You've got to do a different registration than the one that you did tonight, okay? It's in the comment section if you want to grab that link before the video ends in a second. Then don't forget, on June 30th, we're going to have what every real estate investor needs to know about 1031 exchanges. On July 2nd, Bob Norton and myself are going to be sharing about house hacking, okay? So don't forget to tune into those. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Charlene and Paul, do you guys have any final last thing do you guys want to share before we go ahead and end off here?
Hey, so listen, it was great spending time with each and every one of you all tonight. And if you didn't participate, but you're going to watch the video later, thank you for allowing us to speak into your business, into your life. I encourage you to come back to part 2. Come back on the 23rd, participate, send some questions. In the meantime, if you have questions that you would like to ask, you can post them wherever you saw this at, this invitation for this event. Post your questions there. we'll be happy to respond to those as well. Listen, this is our passion to help everyone, because if we didn't have someone helping us years ago and even still helping us today, we wouldn't be where we are. So we want to collaborate and reach out. Don't be afraid. I assure you, there's nothing you can't ask that we haven't already asked ourselves. And if we don't know the answer, we'll find someone who does, and we'll get back with you.
Absolutely.
Thank
Hey,
you.
those are great things to end on. Happy anniversary, you two.
Thank you.
And you guys, if you haven't already, if you want to attend series, the second part of the series, part 2, make sure you register. Otherwise, guys, we're hoping to see you guys hopefully in maybe July if we can have some in-person meetings. But if not, we'll see you on the 23rd. You guys have a great evening. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks, Paul and Charlene, for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting, Courtney.
Sure thing.
Bye-bye.